I'm Youmna El-Sayed. I'm a journalist. I'm Al Jazeera English correspondent in the Gaza Strip. I'm a mother of 4 children. I've been a journalist for the past 8 years of my life. Before joining Al Jazeera in 2021, I worked with international media outlets like TRT, TRT World, TRT Digital, RT, Kuwait TV, CNA, the AP, and then I exclusively joined Al Jazeera English in 2021. Well, first of all, of course, this is not the first war on Gaza. This time, this war is completely different. This is systematic practice genocide from day one. It was planned very well by the Israeli government, implemented by the Israeli army, and unfortunately, with the complicity and backup of many strong Western governments that helped in fueling and the implementation of this genocide against the civilians in the Gaza Strip. When you begin a war from the second day, now before jumping into the beginning of this genocide, 7th of October, that significant date, 7th of October, whenever you speak about the war in Gaza, the genocide, they say, well, the 7th of October, Hamas started it. It's like they haven't been watching years and decades before the 7th of October. They neglected the 6th of October, the 5th of October, and all those days before. They completely turned a blind eye on the reality, the illegal occupation, the oppression that has been imposed and practiced on the Palestinians in East Jerusalem, in the West Bank, and especially and particularly in the Gaza Strip. Before the 7th of October, the Gaza Strip was under a lasting, stifling Israeli siege. UN organizations, in their reports, year after year, warned of the catastrophic conditions, living conditions for the population in the Gaza Strip. Over 2.3 million people living in 365 kilometers square, with a buffer land, a buffer area across the borders, everywhere. The homes in Gaza, the refugee camps adjacent to one another. The restrictions on the movement of people in and out of Gaza for the most simplest necessities, like to travel, to study, to pursue your education. You don't even have that privilege to dream about studying abroad, even if you do have a scholarship. Treatment. Thousands of children, cancer children, died every single year in Gaza because we don't have a cancer hospital. We don't have cancer medications. And they were not allowed to go to the West Bank, to the occupied West Bank, to cross those borders just to take their medication there, the necessary medication. And those who were lucky, a child who could be like 5 years old or even younger, they wouldn't allow his parents to go with him, or his mother or father, because they're under the age of 50. If their grandparents were not alive or in good health, to take care of that child who is a sick child in a very terrible medical condition, people would look for the neighbors that volunteered to go with them, just in order to save the life of that child. That's an injustice that Palestinians have been living in for decades, while the entire world ignored. And don't tell me they did not know, because as a journalist, I know that all United Nations organizations, OCHA, UNRWA, UNICEF, they have been speaking constantly about all these violations against humanity,
breaking stereotypes,
civilians,
moving boundaries,
just
joining
because
hands.
they are Palestinians.
Salaamedia.
Of course, since day one, I've witnessed and I've lived and I've reported live about this every single day. When I went to the field to film those homes, residential homes that were struck by Israeli missiles while the people and the families are inside them, I felt like I was standing over a graveyard of alive people. I heard their screams from under the rubble while I watched other civilians with their own bare hands try to dig to help them out. I witnessed this, not just me. Every single journalist witnessed this. We risked our lives going to these areas because so many areas that we went to were retargeted again. Like the Jabalia refugee camp, the first massacre in the Jabalia refugee camp where 3 homes were struck and 20 people were killed. I went there right away to report that. And the fire was everywhere in these homes, and people were trying to bring out the people who are either killed or might be alive inside these homes. And very shortly, while in that chaos of trying to find out if there are any survivors, Israel decides to restrike again the same area. And I was going to be killed in that restrike. Everyone in that area that did not run and escape for their lives in a matter of minutes, because they called because it was full of people, it was full of civilians, and it was full of journalists. They called and they said they're going to restrike again. And we just had to run quickly so that we're not killed. Of course they do. They feel betrayed, they feel abandoned, and they don't understand why. For 3 months in Gaza, covering this genocide before I was able to evacuate, every single day, I asked myself, isn't this world watching what is happening? The brutality of the killing of our children, of the missiles falling over our heads, of the forced displacement from place to another? Are they not watching what is happening to us? I was filled with rage. I was filled with questions. We asked each other, everyone, why? Why did they give up on us? And until now, we still ask the same question. How can they give up on us? How can they give up on an entire population of over 2 million people caged and trapped? Every single atrocity against humanitarian law and international law has been practiced on the population of Gaza. They have been systematically starved, and our children were watched starve to death. They were watched by the entire world die of malnutrition. You see the picture of the child after he has died. But you don't know the amount of pain that he goes through until he dies, until that moment that he rests in. When he gets skinnier every single day. When his parents have to go through that pain, watching their children die of the lack of food or water because they're thirsty. Because Israel does not want to let in food and water. Because Israel goes and targets every water plant in the Gaza Strip. Why is it targeting water plants? Sources of water for the human beings. It's like you're throwing a human being in a desert without water and food. There's not even water for hygiene, to wash up. So the diseases are spreading widely, rapidly. So if you don't die of starvation, you die of thirst. If you don't die of thirst, you die of diseases, contagious diseases. We're in 2024 and polio is in Gaza. And there's no vaccination because there's no medication. Yes, I was one of the journalists who was called on my husband's mobile phone by so-called IDF officer from a private number, identifying my husband, his full name, and telling him, "We know who you are. Take your family and leave your home. Otherwise, your lives are in danger in the upcoming hours." And our neighborhood was under heavy bombardments. And I used to be live for Al Jazeera on top of every hour. And if you go back to these lives, you will hear the ongoing bombardment in the background, the sounds of the rockets and missiles falling all around. And when my husband said, "You know who we are, and you know that our home is under heavy bombardment. How can we leave? How can I risk the lives of my children and leave my home like this?" And he just replied, "This is your problem. Figure it out. We have warned you, and now it's on you." And he hung up. And we made our calls. Al Jazeera made their calls in Israel, through my colleagues in the West Bank, in East Jerusalem, in Israel, to make sure that this was a direct threat for me. And then it was aired and it was condemned by Al Jazeera that it was a direct threat to a journalist in her home. But what people don't know, for example, is that these moments were the worst moments ever, because I felt that as a mother, I'm a threat to the lives of my children. So when my 12-year-old broke down and started screaming at me, saying, "They're going to kill us because of you," it's the worst feeling you can feel as a parent. That the most precious lives that you want to protect are threatened to be in danger just because you're a journalist, because you're doing your job to inform the world, to tell the people about the atrocities that are going on. A very simple, legitimate right that you are deprived of as a Palestinian journalist. It's not really up to the Palestinians. The Palestinians in the Gaza Strip, they did everything. They really don't have any power. Everything is being imposed on them. That question should be asked to the government of Israel. The mediators, Qatar and in Egypt, they've sat so many times with the Israeli delegation and the Palestinian delegation over and over and over. Agreements have been made, and every single time they were not approved by the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. And that is a fact that no one can say anything about. Even, and maybe this is not really clear to a lot of people, because online, for example, I find a lot of people saying, why wouldn't Hamas sign, for example? Why wouldn't they sign? And President Biden himself, when he spoke about this agreement that was proposed by the United States, by President Biden, and urged Hamas to sign that agreement, it was not explained to the public. It was not explained that this agreement agrees on a ceasefire and not an end to the war. And a ceasefire is temporary. The ceasefire was to be implemented while the hostages, the Israeli hostages and captives inside the Gaza Strip are all freed. And then the fighting would resume. So what did the population of Gaza get? 3 weeks of ceasefire? Do you believe that after over 10 months of ongoing bombardment, starvation, thirst, diseases, loss, injuries, 3 weeks of ceasefire is enough? And Israel does not want to agree to an end of the war, an end to the war. Hamas asked for a written confirmation backed by the United States that it's an end to the war after the release of the Israeli hostages. What about the Palestinian hostages? Where are they? Why are they not mentioned? Does the media, do these international media outlets reporting about Israeli hostages speak about the Palestinian hostages, the unarmed civilians that are being taken, the doctors that were killed of torture in the Israeli prisons? The footage that we have around the world of these detainees, women, men, young boys, everyone coming out of the Israeli prisons or concentration camps, as they call them now, are enormous. You have all the signs of torture on them. And yet nobody's even speaking about it. Nobody's even mentioning what's happening to them. Aren't these considered war crimes under humanitarian laws? So why do we have a double standard when it comes to two sides? We should give full attention, apply all the laws with the Israeli side, and neglect everything that has to do with the Palestinian side. The entire world, I want to tell them to open their eyes, to have a real conscience, to know that what they are or they should be fighting is that they are fighting for humanity. You are fighting for humanity. Humanity, you don't need to be of a certain race or nationality or faith or color to fight for humanity. You fight for humanity because you're a human. Because these international laws and humanitarian laws and conventions that were designed and written and put in order were put to bring justice to the world. And so they should be implemented on the entire world. You can't exclude a country or a nation over the other. Then it's all just a total lie. Then there would be no order, there would be no justice in this world. And the silence is the most powerful complicity. And they are responsible, every single government in this world, every single person who is silent from the beginning about the oppression of the Palestinian people and the illegal occupation of Palestinian lands. Their silence has led to this moment today. Because pressure will only cause an explosion. The 7th of October was the Palestinian explosion. And it was in the way it is, in the manner it is. And yes, I am against the killing of civilians, no matter who they are, no matter their nationalities. So I'm against the killing of any civilian the 7th of October. But I'm also against all the lies, allegations, and claims that were debunked, that were based on no evidence and no facts that the Israeli media brought out. And Western media helped in exposing and distributing around the world, spreading around the world. And for our surprise, the investigations that debunked these Israeli claims and allegations were of Israeli institutions like Harrods and B'Tselem. It's to that extent. This is like the how I see it, the situation, the corruption in this situation. It's to that extent. You're a journalist, you work, you're a media person. You know that every single word that you say, you should be responsible for. You should know the weight of those words. You should know that there are millions of people who put their trust in you. And you should be worthy of that trust by saying the truth. It's not your job to shuffle and filter. It's your job to inform the way it is. That is the real integrity of journalism. And people would decide. Well, that's a question to be asked to everyone who has an agenda towards Gaza. Because I believe that no government will do something for Gaza without a benefit for their action. Gaza is a very rich territory that has been under lasting Israeli siege. We have gas, we have natural gas, fields that we have not been able to benefit from because we are under an Israeli illegal occupation. Give us our freedom and let us rebuild our own country. Let us rebuild our own strip. We will be able to. But do you believe that the United States or Israel or any other Western powerful country will give us that? Will give us our sovereignty, our freedom, and our natural resources to rebuild our country that they have destroyed, our region that they have stolen? That's the real question.